listening to Lagoon Radio.
Good morning and welcome to the newspaper review here on Lagoon Radio. We're broadcasting live to you from Marina, Lagos. How you doing this beautiful Tuesday morning? Hope work is not too hectic. You just have to, take things easy, be calm, don't worry, be happy. Okay, my name is Olabisi Simidili, okay, and I have with me here two other beautiful people, Koinsola Alao and Taiwo Adiola Shabi Olegbe. Taiwo Adiola Shabi Olegbe. Yeah, good morning. How you doing?
Very
this
well.
morning? Okay. Today we have some newspapers to treat, and in no particular order. I'm going to be highlighting them. We have This Nigeria, Al Jazeera, Daily Independent Papers, Nigerian Pilot, People's Dailies, as well as Daily Champion, Nigerian News Direct, Daily Times, Nigerian Tribune, Business Day, and the leadership papers, also National Economy, Daily Trust, New Telegraph, These Day Papers, and Blueprint. We actually have a lot, and we'll try as much as possible to cover everything, if not all. We'll try as much as possible to cover most of the papers. Okay, I'll be starting with this Nigeria papers, and boldly written the front of this Nigeria papers. United Arab Emirates retaliate, and this is concerning the Omicron travel ban. So United Arab Emirates retaliates as they stop international airlines from flying Nigerians to Dubai, and UK also records first new variant death. Then South African president contracts COVID-19. You can get all the details on page 4 of this day papers. 124 years after Oba of Benin receives looted artifacts from UK. You can get out on the inside of this Nigerian papers. Nigeria can't win battle against insecurity without 5G network, says Pantami. So you want to know why? Can check that out on the inside of this Nigerian papers. And moving on, still on this Nigerian papers, this is concerning Sylvester Oromoni's case. Lawyers urge police to invite blogger over reckless comment. So you can get out on the inside of this Nigerian papers. And still on this Nigerian papers, defense chief orders 50 generals to exit military. So you can get it on the inside of these Nigerian papers. That'll be all on this Nigerian papers.
So, moving on to Al Jazeera newspaper, at times, federal government moves additional taxes. Our aspiration is to do a midterm review, says Zainab Ahmed. Small and medium-scale enterprises may be grounded. We need real economic diversification, says CSOs on page 8 of the Al Jazeera Nigerian newspaper. Court jails fake oil magnates 175 years for duping American of over $600. You can read up on page 2. And under the editorial news, Yuletide amid need for caution. You can read up more on page 3. Nigeria regains Africa's top crude oil production spots. You can read up more on page 13. And under news sector, U.S. court summons Buhari and others over Wabote's foreign account on page 2. Banditry, Matawales meets Niger president to seek border security on page 13. COVID-19, UK records first Omicron variant death on page 13. And finally, Nigerians' 5G's coverage will be widest in Africa, says Pantami on page 19 of the Al Jazeera Nigeria newspaper.
All right, moving on to the Daily Independent newspaper. Modu Sharif may emerge consensus candidate for APC national chairmanship. The story is on the front page there. You can continue reading on page 9. Finance Minister hints on possible additional taxes in 2022. The story is also on the front page, and you can continue reading on page 6. Boldly written on the paper, UAE rescinds decision against Nigerian travelers to Dubai. Ethiopian Airlines to resume boarding of Nigerians today. And also restriction due to rising COVID-19 cases in Nigeria, UAE. All this you find on page 7 of the Daily Independent newspaper. Still on the paper, NYSC makes COVID-19 vaccination condition for camp registration, page 7 as well. Inspector killed as gunman attacked Abia Police Headquarters, still on page 7. Nnamdi Kanu sues DSS AGF over poor medical attention, still on page 7 of the Daily Independent. 9th Assembly most successful since 1999, Lawan boasts. This you can read up on page 28 of the paper. Also, at the very bottom of the paper, insurance boards may be liable for unpaid claims by firms. The story is on the front page, and you can continue reading. Anambra government confiscates petrol stations gutted by fire in Onitsha. You can read up on page 28. $418 million deduction. Court declines granting injunction order against federal government. This you can read up on page 29.
All right, moving on to Nigerian pilots. Right at the top of Nigerian pilot papers, only vaccinated prospective core members will serve from 2022, says NYSC Director General. You can get that on page 12 of the Nigerian pilot. And we have capacity to monitor party primaries, says INEC, also on page 12 of the Nigerian pilot papers. And boldly written on the front page of the Nigerian pilot papers, more taxes coming. And the writer under that says, Finance Minister hints that there'll be new tariffs levies in 2022. I'm actually emphasizing that because Okay, also says proposed taxes contained in 2021 finance bill being considered at NAS. Then it says that finance ministry worked with stakeholders, fiscal reform committee to draft bill as federal government proposes 5-year jail, 5 million naira fine for failure to remit taxes, levies, and others. You can get all that on page 8 of the Nigerian pilot, and this is to say, 2022 we ain't gonna be smiling at all. You know, it's no joke. It's no joke. Okay. Also, concerning the $418 million Paris Club refund, court refuses injunctive order against federal government. You can get that on page 5 of the Nigerian pilot. Only 100% prepared CBT centers will be used for 2022 UTME. No other people said that apart from JAMP. Then Nimbe Hoispel, Governor Diri dissatisfied with Reps silence. Can get out on page 7 of the Nigerian pilot papers. Lawan says 9th NAS most successful in lawmaking since 1999. Also on page 7 of the Nigerian pilot papers. Suspected bandits kill 10 in fresh Plateau attack. That's on page 34 of the Nigerian pilot papers. United Arab Emirates and Nigeria now as federal government blows hot, says Nigeria's sovereignty remains paramount. You can get that on page 5 of the Nigerian pilot. And lastly, on Nigerian pilot papers on page 11, Minister says Nigeria to have widest 5G network in Africa by 2022. That'll be all on the Nigerian pilot papers.
So we're moving from 4G to 5G in 2022.
Yes, please. Maybe 2023 you're going to move to 6G.
I see it's coming.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to the People's Daily newspaper. $418 million Paris Club refund. Court refuses injunctive order against federal government. You can read up on page 5. Malam Wada Maida, founding chairman board of People's Media Limited, 1950 to 2020. Non-remittance of tax and revenue. Buhari proposes 5-year jail and 5 million naira fine for offenders. All of these can be found on page 5. INEC registers 4.7 million Nigerians under fresh CVR. You can read up on page 2. Kano sees DSS, AGF over poor medical attention. Read up on page 4 of the People's Daily newspaper. Concerning insecurity, Sultan calls for national prayers on page 7. And UI emerges best varsity in NUC's 2021 ranking. You can read up on page 6. As regards 2023, Nigerians won't disintegrate. IU assures Nigerians on page 3 of the People's Daily newspaper.
All right, moving on to the Daily Champion newspaper. At the very top of the paper, Wike flays federal government's policy on stimulation of nation's economy. And the writer to the story says, SAC Health Commissioner says consultation for next governor of Rivers State has begun. And also, Nigeria to have widest 5G coverage in Africa, says Pantami. This story you can read up on page 8. And the writer to it says, as bidders push 5G license to $224 million per slot. All right, still on the paper, Lagos to reintroduce Fashola strategy to combat collection of levies by tout. Said Sowolu. The story is on page 8, and the writer to the story says that 200,000 residents will enjoy newly inaugurated reads in Victoria Island. You can read up on page 8. Another one says National Assembly to pass proposed 2022 budget this week, says Lawan. You can read up on page 12 of the Daily Champion newspaper. And the major headline there says, stop bringing Nigerians to our country, United Arab Emirates, others foreign airlines. And the writer to the story says, you want to say something on that? It shook you?
It shocked me, like, stop bringing Nigerians to our country. Hey, Jehovah.
Mimo.
So, if they don't bring them to your country, where should they take them to? Are you saying Nigerians don't have value, they add into your country, or?
No, I think it's because of the new variant of the COVID-19. It was first discovered in 2 Nigerians. So, and that's, I think other countries are kind of scared of allowing Nigerians in, because these 2 Nigerians, we don't know, they don't know if they've infected some other people with this variant. And you never can tell who and who is infected, because as it is, even the Omicron variant doesn't have a particular symptoms. It doesn't have a particular symptom yet. So that's the way it is. So I think they're actually scared, and they don't want to curb the spread. I know Nigerians.
So when they brought disease to the country, did we stop them from coming in?
It's because we allowed them to come in. If we hadn't allowed them to come in, it wouldn't have spread to this area. Then I remember back then, the first case.
It's very easy for them to condemn.
Yeah, when the first COVID-19 stuff started in, I think, early 2020,
Yes.
all that, the airports were not closed. The airports were open for weeks until people now started coming from there, maybe out of fear that the cases, the whole thing began to spread here in Nigeria. So that's what we should have done in the first place. That's what we should have done. Now they are doing it. We are now retaliating, and it's kind of causing a kind of, I won't say a kind of a mini battle. Let me put it that way.
Okay, so the writer to the story says, as Ethiopian airline denies Nigerians boarding, only those vaccinated against COVID-19 will serve from next year. Okay, and I think this is basically talking
For
about
NYSC.
the air hostesses and
No, for
NYSC,
NYSC,
yes,
yeah.
NYSC too. Okay, so I think it came together. Oh, okay.
And even as it is now, without your card, without your vaccination card, you won't be able to go to Owambe, you won't be able to maybe go to a gathering of people and all that. That's actually what has been in the news since late last week, really.
But me, I went for Owambe on Saturday.
No, it hasn't started to take effect, so you have to take your vaccine, get vaccinated, get your jabs.
Don't let us go to that
First
vaccination.
and
Don't let us go there.
Don't worry, the Lord is your strength.
Okay, so
nothing
you
will
can read
happen
up
to
on
you.
this on page 6. And Nigeria regains top crude oil production spots in Africa, OPEC. This one is on page 8 of the Daily Champion newspaper. Nnamdi Kanu drags AGF DSS to court over alleged denial of fundamental rights in DSS custody. You can read up on page 5 of the paper. Despite COVID-19, Lagos Agric Ministry generates 1 billion naira in 2021. Wow. And the writer to the story says, Assess Commissioner, the writer to the story says, as Sonolu prepares seafood rice along with white money. This you can read up on page 4 of the paper. Another story here says, Uzodima at 63 will dedicate self to serve humanity. And the writer to the story says, calls for joint efforts to secure time at Yuletide. You can read up on page 3. Have you continued to take part in evangelism till the end? Mwanyanwu says, you can read up on page 2. CBN earmarks 41 billion naira through Heritage Bank for dry season wheat project farming. You can read up on page 3 of the Daily Champion newspaper.
All right. Court jails fake oil magnate 175 years for duping American $629,287. 175 years. That one. Okay, you can get that on page 2 of the Nigerian News Direct, because I don't know how many years that the person has to spend on earth before getting jailed 175 years. Okay. Privatization default. Abuja discos on new board chair assures staff of job security and welfare. That's on page 22 of the Nigerian News Direct. And still on the 5G, MAFAB, MTN emerge winners in Nigeria's 3.5 gigahertz spectrum auction. Can get that as well on page 22 of the Nigerian News Direct, and boldly written on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct. National Assembly members receive over 1.12 billion naira per tenure as salaries, says Senate President. And more reason, he shook you. And more reason I'm actually thinking of going into politics, like maybe I'm going to contest for a member of the National Assembly. Shab will be my campaign manager, and Koinsola will be my makeup artist. Thank you. And publicity manager. So the writer on that says, denies Assembly being a rubber stamp to executive. Lawan-led Assembly not serving Nigerians, but Buhari, says Fadaka. And the spokesman, the Labour Party, says 9th National Assembly worst in Nigeria's history. And moving on to Finance Bill 2021. FIRS executive chairman says our tax system must work for every Nigerian. Please make it work for every Nigerian, because now the tax is about the tax revenue is about to increase, or the tax levy is about to increase in 2022. Please make it work for every Nigerian, because every Nigerian will want to get value for their money. That'll be all on the Nigerian News Direct.
So moving on to the next newspaper, which is the Daily Times newspaper. Stronger executive legislative partnership will deepen democracy, says Buhari. You can read up more on page 2. We have initiated steps to make UK and others reverse ban on Nigerian travelers, says federal government, as regards Omicron variant. Warns that while countries are free to set up measures to protect their citizens, Nigeria should not be singled out. You can read up all of this on page 3. Another news story, Finance Minister eats on possible additional taxes in 2022. Read up more on page 2 of the Daily Times newspaper.
All right, moving on to the Nigerian Tribune newspaper. At the very top of the paper, mixed feelings as Lagos earmarks 5 billion naira to kickstart monthly rental policy. You can read up on page 15 of the paper. Senate President justifies multi-billion naira cows, jumbo pay for legislators. You can read up on page 22. Confusion over UAE's ban on passengers from Nigeria. And the writer to the story says, we have initiated diplomatic steps for UK, others to revenue travel ban, says federal government. You can read up on page 5 of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper. Alright, still on the paper, MTN MAFAB win bid for Nigerians 5G spectrum. And the writer to the story says, winners got regulators nod at $273 million. You can read up on page 7 of the paper. New finance bill. Federal government proposes 5-year jail term for non-remittance of tax and other revenues. I was listening to this thing on radio this morning. I can't just help but shake my head and Wonder where this money is going to, because now EFCC is involved. As to my own knowledge,
I
EFCC is
wonder
involved.
why. I wonder how.
Sterling Bank is being mentioned. So we eventually get to know what's up, and I will come here to give you an update. You can read up on that on page 6. The main story on the paper says UK records first Omicron death. EFCC bars on vaccinated staff. And the writer to the story says only those vaccinated will serve from next year, says NYSC. 2-dose vaccines not enough, the study has revealed. You can read up all these on page 5. Kanu's blood sample taken more than 21 times, lawyer alleges. And the writer to the story says takes TSS to court over alleged violation of right. You can read up on page 15 of the Nigerian Tribune. Nigeria regains top crude oil production spot in Africa, OPEC report. You can read up on page 6. 124 years after Benin Palace takes possession of stolen artifacts. You can read up on page 15 as well. No difference between Nigeria security agencies and terrorists. Equal. This is much.
OPP.
Well, El Zaki said so. You can read up on page 27 of the paper. 18-year-old traffic robber arrested for third time in Lagos. And the writer to the story says 4 weeks after release from prison. You can read up on page 26. And at the very bottom of the paper, 6 years after Nigerians' violence against persons law still struggling for domestication in 17 states. All this you can read up on page 16 of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper.
Okay, we're wrapping up. Moving on to the Daily Trust papers. Obasanjo to Nigerians, don't expect anything more from Buhari, says Obasanjo. As the federal government rakes 227 billion naira as MTN Mafabuin 5G license. Unvaccinated core members barred from NYSC camps because of COVID-19. And boldly written at the front page of the Daily Trust papers, Nigerians to pay more taxes, tariffs, says federal government. And we're actually saying this, I think this has been reoccurring on the papers, and we're purposely saying this to prepare our minds against 2022 to pay more taxes and tariffs. You know, maybe the bank charges, and all that. Okay, and prices of drinks, tobacco, stamp duty to rise as well. Subsidy removal, additional taxes will aggravate economic woes, says experts. And as regards this subsidy removal, I think sometimes ago we read it in the news that in year 2022 there will be subsidy removal. There's a proposal for subsidy removal and also increase in fuel price to 340 naira per litre. So, and experts have said subsidy removal, additional taxes will aggravate economic woes. Then you can get the full details on page 5 of the Daily Trust papers. And still on Daily Trust papers, declare state of emergency on terrorists and Dave's Tambuwal urges Buhari. Can get the details on the inside of the Daily Trust papers. 20 killed in Bauchi auto crashes. You can get that on Daily Trust papers too. Then, like Facebook, Zoom to start charging 7.5% value added tax from Nigerian users. You can get it on page 18 of the Daily Trust papers. Okay, Nigeria, United Arab Emirates lose millions daily as diplomatic road deepens. More airlines reject Nigerian passengers to Dubai. Countries pushing for self-interest, says Dawn. And consultations ongoing, says the Foreign Affairs Ministry. All right, thank you for joining us on today's segment of the newspaper review. Do join us again same time tomorrow at 9:30 to 10 a.m. Nigerian time. Do want to follow us on all our social media platforms: Facebook at Lagoon Radio Nigeria, Instagram and Twitter at Lagoonradio.Ng, as well as our YouTube channel on www.youtube.com/LagoonTV to put faces to the beautiful voices you're listening to. 2. My name is Olabisi Simideloke, and by 10 a.m. we'll be having the Land House and Radio Show by Ariola Olumogba Ajanoku. Good morning. Koyinsala say good morning.
Good morning.
Sharp.
Good morning.
All right, have a nice day.
You are listening to Lagoon Radio. You are listening to Lagoon